the beginning of Kardec's biography when he was still Rivail. I will not, so it was with Radio Kardec, Kardec Radio, sorry, with Vanessa Anceloni. I think some of you have watched it already. I will not repeat all that in full detail, otherwise the time would be too short today. So I will only show some slides and go quickly so that I can then enter into more in detail with Kardec and also the codification after Kardec. Okay. So starting, Denizard Hypolite Léon Rivail is the name which is written on this birth certificate you can see on the right side. He was born in city of Lyon, 3rd of October, 1804, which is 216 years ago. So it's already 16 years that we commemorated his bicentenary, 200 years, in the World Spiritist Congress in Paris. And the year after, 2005, in agreement with the city of Lyon, we have has been installed this monument that you can see here on the left side photography, which is the second monument homenageating Allan Kardec in France, after, of course, his tomb, the dolmen in Cemetery Père Lachaise in Paris. What was written is he lived in Bourg-en-Bresse, means Rue Sala was not his home address. It was an establishment for thermal cares with thermal waters, helping women who had difficulty to have children. So this is why he's born at this address, but his home address was in Bourg-en-Bresse, and his father was currently in Paris at that moment. Here I again show the biographies who have been written about Kardec. One of the first one, as you can see, is from Anna Blackwell. It's 1875, and it was inserted in the first edition of the English translation of the Spirit's book that she did. Then you have other biographies, you see a lot, José Colavida from Spain. You have also Henri Sauce, which is, let's say, most known one in French, but which contains a lot of statements which have not been confirmed, and some who have also been found as being not correct. And I think one of the most complete one so far is on the top of the second column, which is Zeus Van Tuyl and Francisco Thyssen, which has been done in the 80s, revised in year 2000, and that is translated into French, and which is going much more in detail, but not to the full extent of what we can achieve today with all these online archives and all these thousands of documents who appeared recently, as I will show you. So also very quickly, his genealogy. You see him here. His father was Jean-Baptiste Antoine Rivail. What happened with him was not clear in the biographies, but we found now 3 judgments in court that he disappeared without giving any further information around 1807, which means that the young Hypolite Léon Denizard Rivail had no father anymore when he was 2.5 to 3 years old. So he did not get the education from his father. So he got the education from his mother, which is here, Jeanne-Louise Duhamel, and the family was the young Hypolite, Jeanne-Louise Duhamel, her brother, which is the uncle of Rivail, which is François Duhamel, and the grandmother, Marie-Charlotte Beauchard. In fact, his father, there is 3 judgments that he disappeared, but we found that in reality, he did not disappear. He was not died in Spain or whatsoever. He died with 75 years old in Périgueux d'Ordogne. And what we found also is he was together with another woman and probably had abandoned his family and the son to go with another woman in that region. And also the grandfather on the mother's side, he was after the French Revolution killed through the guillotine because he had a very important function in that region, before the revolution, and that was then somehow difficult situation at that time. So even without father and only with the mother, the grandmother, and the uncle, they managed to get him to study in Yverdon, together with the Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi Institute. It was a teacher which was very well known in Europe, developing the methods of education from Rousseau, and very close to the children, really autonomous education, taking the children to the nature to observe themselves, the phenomenon, and then deduce from themselves the laws which were governing this phenomenon, of course, with the help of the teacher. So you see, the education was very different than, okay, here it's written in the book, just take it by heart, and then so that's how to say, it was already a very modern education. Also, that school had many children from UK, different countries, different languages, German, Italian, Spanish, different religions as well. And this gave to this young boy, Hypolite Léon Denizard Rivail, a very wide cultural awareness, openness in terms of languages, in terms of cultures, in terms of religions, which was, of course, fundamental for what he would do later on. Then you can see 1822, the whole family moved, except the grandmother, moved to Paris. And you can see that 1st of February 1823, there was an announcement that Hypolite Léon Denizard Rivail would publish a book, Cours pratique et théorique d'arithmétique, according to the methods of Pestalozzi, with some improvements. So you can see he was not even 19 years old at that time. And you can see then on the next, on the bottom side, in December, the book was published. And you can see on the right side a copy of the cover of this book, together with the signature of the author. And you can see his birth name was Léon Denizard Hypolite, but he changed the sequence by putting Hypolite Léon Denizard Rivail. That is the way that he wrote the book, and this is why I use this writing on the top of the slides. Okay, so he did not take too long. You see, with 19 years old, he was already writing the first books. And you can see here 1825 means with 21-year-old, he was not even, he was already opening his first school. So it's a primary degree school for young children. And this was announced also in the Journal de l'Imprimerie, as you can see here. We have all these documents and evidences that you can get and download and search on the French National Library website without any problem. So this institute was operating in 9 Rue Richer in Paris. Then it was growing along the years, and you can see that in 1828 it was already in Rue de Vaugirard with a bigger installation, more classes, more children, and so on, more teachers. And in 1831 it went even to a bigger place where it was not only primary school, it was also secondary school with several classes, several ages, several teachers, professors. So that was really the top of his activity as a teacher and as director of a school. And as I told you when I was in London last year, 1837, he made a travel to London to look for students for his school. We found into the London Morning Post the announcement written in French, where he was looking for students in London for this Institut Polymatique he was leading in Paris. Then you can see also 1840, he transferred the institute to another person, Signor Pilotet, and we don't know for sure yet exactly why, but it was probably because what's written in the biographies is his uncle was gambling a little bit too much, lost a lot of money, and the family was in debt, so he had to sell the institute in order to pay the debt, unfortunately. And that is then the beginning of some more difficult period. 1841 to 1854, basically, he had to make some other small jobs in order to survive. So it was a bank, insurance company, theaters. It was also, as you can see, a pensionate for girls that he was leading together with Amélie, because education was more for the boys at that time. And then 1850 came another problem, this law, Falloux, which opened the door for religious influence on education and developed also a lot the anti-clericalism movement against this. So it was a fight, and he could not continue his activities or reopen the institution since this pensionate for girls was operating reasonably. And this is why then he had to continue with as math teacher together with Levi Alvarez, who had then another college, and working also on theaters. He also deposited a patent for a siphon for the avoiding the, how to say, the vapors coming back from the wastewater system in Paris. And he was also working as a counter in theater and also in some Catholic bookshop and Catholic journal as well. So this was then in the early 1850s. And then 1855, you see, he was already living in 8 Rue des Martyrs, and that is where he started the observations of the turning table phenomenon, and where he brought and made where he was living when he issued the first edition of the Spirits book in 1857, and also where he started the Spiritist magazine, and also the society, the Parisian, Society of Paris for Spiritist Studies was also started when he was living in this address. Okay, where do we get all this information from? There is several hundred or even a couple of thousand documents original from Kardec that appeared in the last years, mostly since 2018, on top of some hundreds that we had already found in 2010 here in France. And this is giving huge quantity of information that needs to be scanned and then transcribed into French and then translated into Portuguese and hopefully English as well soon. And this is a huge work that has been started now, and with the support of the University of Juiz de Fora in Brazil. You can see here on the screen the website that they have opened, projetocardec.ufjf.br, like Brazil, and where there are already something like 60 of these original documents. I sent them already the translation of the website in French, so it will be soon Portuguese, French, and hopefully you can also manage to have that translated into English, so to have at least 3 languages of the website, French, English, and Portuguese. But you see, as there are thousands of documents, it's a huge work, years of work for tens of people. It's really a lot of information that is coming now, and with which we will learn a lot more about Rivail, and also about Kardec, and even things after Kardec. As you can see, there is a huge team of university professors, you see, doctors, and from the University of Sorbonne in different fields. So it's a huge team of very skilled people which are supporting this project, and then, of course, giving a huge strength and a huge credibility to all this operation. Amongst these documents, we found the first letter that he wrote, the Hypolite Rivail wrote to his future spouse, Amélie. The letter is from August 1831, and it's a very nice letter because when they met, it was how to say, immediate fit between them. And the letter is very, very nice to read. It's maybe a little bit intimacy of them, but it's so nice that really it's a big pleasure to see how was the harmony and the extremely fair way they treated themselves and so on. So there is absolutely nothing to hide. It's really pure love and very interesting information. It has been transcribed in the Spiritist magazine, Revue Spirit in French, and also in this Revista Cultura Espírita from Brazil. I don't know if it's translated already into English, but also this is something that we can organize. And then you can see 8 months later or 6 months later, they married, 9th of February, 1832. You see this picture of family, which is little known. Huh? She was a little bit younger than the usual picture we had. And this picture also has been found in August 2018. Of course, it has already been multiplied thousands and even millions of times into the internet since. And we had also all the documents about the marriage with a list of all the people who participate and so on. So you see huge information that we got now about Rivail. Also, we got some information about the scientific society he participated. There is something like 15 in total, but I will show here only 2. Huh? You can see this Institut Historique, so Historical Institute. And why do I show it? Because I was looking who were the members of this institute. And you can see here Ampère, huh? That is very well known from the electrical engineers. Bottin also, who made the first address book of Paris. And you can see also Lacordaire, Lamartine, Lamennais, which are names that all the Spiritists know. Why? Because they have signed some of the communication which are in the Spirit books. Huh? Not only the Spirit's book, but also all the 5 books Kardec wrote later on. And important is Kardec was telling, you can easier recognize the identity of a communicating spirit when you have known it when he was alive. And here we have the evidence that he knew Lacordaire, Lamennais, and Lamartine when they were alive. So interesting. And it shows also the level of people he was knowing at that time. So he was really very well known in his educational activities by a lot of eminent people in France. And you see the other one is Society for Natural Sciences of France. Some of the biographs wrote he was doctor, he was not doctor or physician, but he participated to such society, so he was, how to say, interested, and also he had some technical skills into this area, even if he was not a doctor. Another thing that is not written in the biographies is they educated a young girl called the Little Louise. There is also a publication into the Revue Spirit and also in this Ismael Gobo blog on internet, where you have it, the version also in Portuguese. So this little girl was not adopted by them. It couldn't, because the law of adoption didn't allow to adopt that, how to say, Kardec and Amélie were too young, and the little Louise was also too young. Only older people could adopt older, how to say, people above 18 or even 20 years. I don't remember exactly. But even so, they educated. We found a lot of letters showing this. And she spent, I would say, 7 or 8 years with them. But unfortunately, she died very young, at more or less 10 years old, in November 1845. So all this also coming out of all these correspondences that we had analyzed. Okay, so this is more or less what I wanted to say about the period of Rivail. I will now enter a little bit more into Kardec. So I told you that he was living 1854 in 8 Rue des Martyrs. And that is then when he got in touch with the first moving table and psychography phenomenon that were done in Paris in some groups after, this Hypolite phenomenon, who gave all this turning table fashion or practice around the world, including heavily in France. And after observing the phenomenon, he came to the evidence, there is no trick. It's really authentical. Nobody is moving. There is no rope, no elastic, nothing. So he immediately recognized that the phenomenon is authentic. And he also recognized that some intelligent question became intelligent answers. So his immediate deduction was there is no effect without a cause, and there is no intelligent effect, or any intelligent effect must have an intelligent cause. And that is then when he decided to investigate this along his life, the rest of his life, because he was already 50 years old at that moment. And then he participated to several groups with a lot of questions and answers. They gave him a lot of books of questions and answers that they did along the years, even before he met with all these group leaders. And he made also his own investigation with several mediums, making his own questions. And the compilation and organization of all this gave the 18th of April 1857, 163 years ago, the first issue of the Livre des Esprits, Spirits book. The first edition was with 501 questions and answers. It has been revised 3 years later in 1860, where it had, as per today, 1,019 questions and answers. Okay, I write here that this is a revolutionary book. This is also, by the way, when he adopted his pseudonym, Allan Kardec, because as I showed you before, he was very well known as an educator in a lot of scientific societies and so on before this, and he didn't want to use this as in order to promote something else or something new. And this is why he took this pseudonym, to stay neutral and to let the Spiritism, how to say, develop naturally without giving the impression of willing to promote something by the fact he was very well known in the French society at that time. And also Allan Kardec is a name that has been advised to him by some spirits who told him that was really his name in a past life when he was in the Druid epoch, incarnated together with his mentor that assisted him during this life. So why is it a revolutionary book? I'm here thanking a lot Paulo Henrique de Figueiredo, who wrote this book that you can see here on the top right side of the slide, Autonomia, a História Jamais Contada do Espiritismo. Unfortunately, it's only in Portuguese right now. We have started some translation into French. And this book was really making a deep analysis of the context in France in the early 19th century, or even late 18th century, after the French Revolution. Because as you can see on the top, Kardec wrote in the Spiritist magazine 1863 that it was in these extremely favorable circumstances that Spiritism arrived. Earlier, it would have run into all-powerful materialism. In an earlier time even, it would have been drowned out by blind fanaticism. And it is not very easy to understand why he wrote this, because we could imagine, no, because the traditional religion would fight anyhow against him and so on. And this is exactly what this book explains, because after the French Revolution, the philosophy and psychology in France followed the spiritualist paradigm. This paradigm was mainly introduced by Maine de Biran, but was then later on developed by Victor Cousin, who was professor at the Sorbonne and École Normale de Paris, and also later Henri Bergson, who promoted even these ideas until the early 20th century. And this was called the French spiritualism or the rational spiritualism. And the principle of this philosophy was freedom, liberté, égalité, fraternité after the revolution. So this was, how to say, conquisted by the French population after the revolution, to be free of the monarchy, to be free of this heavy religious influence on the education, on the politics, and everywhere. Other principle is the free will. And the fundamental role of the will which is of spiritual origin. And this is why it was a spiritualist philosophy, because very clearly they told and explained and demonstrated that the will doesn't come from the brain or from the physical body. It can only come from the soul. So it was clearly a spiritualist philosophy. So you can imagine that this opened a lot, because all the students of philosophy in the secondary schools and so on were studying and learning this philosophy. So they were opened to the spirituality, but not in a religious dogmatic way. They were really oriented to that into the philosophical way. So this is one of the reasons why these circumstances were extremely favorable. This philosophy also was always promoting, together with the freedom, of course, the autonomy. Each one is autonomous to do, together with the free will, whatever he wants. And this is opposed to the heteronomy, which is a word having the opposite meaning as autonomy. And the heteronomy was the approach from the kings or from the emperors or from the religious, who were always telling to the people what they have to do. You have to do this because because it's written. If you don't do this, you go to hell, whatever, you see. If you want to go to heaven, you have to do that. So it means they was telling to the people what they have to do. And this is exactly the definition of heteronomy. Definition of autonomy is the opposite, is if I do something, I do it because I want, or because I understood it. And as you can see also, the Spiritist teaching are also fundamentally autonomous, which was the second reason why the Spirit's book had an immediate success starting in 1857. Okay. But what happened also is during the Restoration, you see, 1815 to, and even Napoleon was the first emperor from 1804 to 1815. Then 1815 to 1830, the Restoration, the brother of the king, Louis XVI, came back and so on. So it was a new monarchy. And then later on in the Second Empire, also with Napoleon III, which was another emperor, the monarchy were again allied with the church, and they were fighting rational spiritualism because they wanted to bring back the heteronomy, you see. And that is why during that period in France, you had, I think in 100 years, you had 7 or 8 different regimes, because always it was comeback of the old system, and then new revolution for openness again, then again back to the old regime, and then a new revolution. So there were a lot of changes, because the people who won in the French Revolution the liberty and the autonomy, they didn't want to come back to the previous period. But what happened during this short period is that you had also the development of the reaction to this, which was positivism, scientism, and anti-clericalism, coming from the scientific people at that time, Auguste Comte, Laplace, and many others. And so the materialism was also very strong, but they opposed not only they opposed also to the religion and also to the spiritualist paradigm, and they came back to a pure materialist paradigm and a full determinism, which means we are governed by biochemical reactions, and the consciousness is a produce of the brain and whatsoever. So, and this is, by the way, what we suffer until today. And this is why Kardec wrote a little bit earlier, means if he would have come in this period, 1815, 1830, he would have to fight against this all-powerful materialism. But luckily, there was a period between 1830 and 1852, or even 1855, which almost the Spirit's book, where this rational spiritualism came back. Victor Cousin was teaching against this philosophy into the schools in France. So all the first spiritists were in fact rational spiritualists. And what Kardec brought with the Spirit's book, he brought the study from this rational spiritualism was about the incarnated brain by introspection. And Kardec, through the mediumship and the paranormal phenomenon, he could also extend this study also to the discarnated spirit, which means covering the full cycle of the existence of the soul. And he brought also this fact, the factual basis to the rational spiritualism, which was more on the philosophical way about introspection and not based on external phenomenon as it was the case for the mediumship. And this is why this book was so revolutionary at that time and even today, where we still have the materialism dominating and where we still have to fight to bring back a spiritualist paradigm, because as I will show you later on, the materialism is really on the source of most of the problem of selfishness, of wars, and a lot of miseries in the world are exactly coming from this materialist paradigm, unfortunately. So after this first book, he wrote also 4 other main books, the book on mediums, Gospel according to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, and also the Genesis. You can find this book in French on the French encyclopedia, spiritisme.net, and also some in English on this Kardecpedia. It's also kind of an encyclopedia in Brazil, which is also translated into English. And this is then when Kardec, at the end, discarnated in Paris, 31st of March, 1869. And you can see here the second monument we have in Paris for him, which is the dolmen, his tomb in the Père Lachaise, which is, by the way, the most visited one, the one with the most flower, every time, all the years, the whole year. It's I would really like that all the people who go there would at least read the Spirit's book. Unfortunately, it's not the case, because a lot of people are going there to put the hand on his shoulder, that you can see in bronze, to make some wishes, and these wishes are normally accomplished as per their superstition, unfortunately. And each time I'm there, I'm asking the person, did you already read the book of him? And bon, 1 out of 5, let's say, read already, but 4 out of 5 didn't read yet. So it's a way of promoting this, that they know him better. Okay, then what happened then during the time he wrote these 5 books between 1858 and 1869? So he made the work of writing this book. He was leading the Société Parisienne des Études Spirites. It was not easy. In 1860, he almost gave up and demitted himself from the society because there were too many problems, a lot of people influencing and how to say, jeopardizing the work and having different interests and whatever. So it was a tough time for him. And also he suffered a lot of pressure from the clergy. There were first from Spirit's book and Medium's book a lot of, how to say, Catholic books written against Spiritism, that it is evil, that it is forbidden to Catholics to participate to this session, and so on and so on. But when he wrote the Gospel according to Spiritism, then they got much stronger, and they put all the books into the Index Librorum Prohibitorium, the index for forbidden books. And in reality, that was an opportunity, because a lot of people would, why do they forbid this book? And they bought them in order to see what was the content and why they were forbidden. So in fact, it works the opposite way, because at that time, as you have seen, the French population won already some liberty, and how to say, these old methods from the clergy did not work anymore. Nevertheless, he suffered big pressure. 21st of September 1861, he sent some boxes of books to his friend Maurice Lachâtre, who was out of France because he participated to this revolution against Napoleon III, so he could not live in France anymore. He was living in Spain. And when Kardec sent his books have been, taken at the customs and on the demand of the clergy, and they have been burned in this auto da fe in Barcelona. And this had exactly the same effect because it was a huge advertisement for these books in Spain. A lot of people in Spain, they wanted to know what is written in these books to have such a reaction from the clergy. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, why in Spain, the Spiritism was developed quite early and quite strongly. And even after Kardec, it was the strongest Spiritist country during a lot of years. So we got also from these 2,000 documents I told you, some indications that there were a lot of Jesuits infiltrated into the Société Parisienne des Études Spirites. And they were there making all this mess, as I explained you, and making these difficulties to Kardec. And when Kardec published the Heaven and Hell book, you see that the Heaven and Hell, the first part, is exactly written, I like this book very much because, you know, when I was young and my hard drive here has been formatted Catholic, with heaven, with evil, with angels and so on. And really this book helped me a lot in order to revise a little bit this wrong formatting, let's say so, to go into the sense of a more rational one. So all these Jesuits, they were eager to find answers and to make books to write against the heaven and hell. But the Spirit in the communication, he told most of the book of the first edition of the Heaven and Hell book have been bought by Jesuits, and they had really a tough time to find arguments against these very clear, strong, rational arguments that Kardec brought. Interesting to see this. And this is something that we can see now from this document that are coming, appearing back, and that you will soon, hopefully, have access into this portal I showed you earlier. Okay, now there is a question also about the religion. Is Spiritism a religion? This is you go in Brazil, most of the people, they will tell you Spiritism is a science, a philosophy, and a religion. For them, it's clear. Almost everyone agrees on this there. But when you tell this, at least in France, and I don't know in UK, but you have probably the same problem. I know that in Germany, you have also exactly the same problem. When you come with a world religion, all the people get in mind back, come back to heteronomy, loss of freedom, Inquisition, and so on. So the people, they put a curtain or they stand up and they go away. It's really not the right, the people here don't accept Spiritism as being a religion, or when you present Spiritism as a religion, they lose the interest for the Spiritist teachings. And Allan Kardec had a very clear statement into his speech of the Parisian Society for Spiritual Studies, Spiritist Studies. Yearly meeting was always in November, commemorating the Day of the Dead. And the 1st of November, 1868, means only 5 months before he died, he made a speech about is Spiritism a religion? And this is, then you can find it in the Spiritist magazine of December the same year. So I will put some quotes of this here to show you that even with this strong pressure, he resisted always. He never declared the Spiritism as a religion. And he's clearly writing and explaining why into this speech. So he's writing in its true sense. The word religion means bond. A religion in its broad and true meaning is a bond that links men in a community of feelings, principles, and belief. Men and women, of course, humans. The bond established by a religion, whatever its object, is therefore an essentially moral bond which connects the hearts, which identifies thoughts, aspiration. So this is when you go to the deep meaning of the word religion, to the philosophical meaning. So when you take this definition of the word, that is still the same today, at least in French, in this definition, of course, yes, the Spiritism is a religion because it's bonding the people, joining the hearts, and so on. There is a perfect fit. In the philosophical sense, Spiritism, yes, is a religion, and Kardec wrote, we pride ourselves on it because it is the doctrine which forms the bonds of a fraternity, communion of thoughts, not on a simple convention, but on a more solid basis of the laws of nature. The laws of nature are also called laws of God, because God has created the universe and the nature. And this is on which the moral taught by the spirits is based on. Okay, so, but the problem is, okay, in this philosophical sense, yes, Spiritism is a religion. Now, go to UK, in London, in the street or wherever, and ask 100 people, how do you understand religion? How many do you think will understand the word like this? Maybe 10%, 15, or 20. So you have 80% of the people, their understanding is absolutely like this. It's completely different. And this was the same in France at that time, and is still the same in France today. So, and this is why Kardec wrote very clearly, why then have we declared that Spiritism is not a religion? For the reason that there is only one word to express two different ideas. And that in general opinion, so of the majority of people, the word religion is inseparable from that of worship, that it awakens exclusively an idea of form, and that Spiritism has none. Continuing, Spiritism having none of the characteristic of a religion, in the usual sense of the word, could not, nor ought to adorn itself with a title, on whose value one would have inevitably misunderstood. This is why it is simply said philosophical and moral doctrine. You see? So if Kardec would have told Spiritism is a religion, then what would have happened? There would have been immediately some divisions, a lot of discussions, and so on. Because what is the word religion recalling us? As you can see here, wars, not so long ago in Northern Ireland, and even today in Syria or in Armenia or wherever. Inquisition, crusades, pious, Joan of Arc, and so many scientists from that mid-age time. Trade in indulgences, you see, all type of abuse, financial extortion of the people. Exclusivism also, because when we talk about religion, this is my religion. I'm Catholic, which means I'm not Protestant, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Buddhist, I'm not... Everyone has only one religion and not two or three. It's absolutely exclusive from any other type of religion, in a way that even when sometimes you have a marriage between a Catholic and an evangelic, there is problems, because where do they go? How do they make the religious marriage? It's getting complicated, you see. And this is an idea of exclusivism where you have to select one religion, which is your one, that a lot of people then think it's better than the one of the other, and so on, which makes all these a lot of difficulties we have in the world. Okay. Behind the word religion, there is also this domination. The religions are want to dominate. That's why you had all these things here above, with the war, Inquisition, crusades, and empires. Manipulation of the masses and the heteronomy. You have to do what I teach you. The Pope cannot make mistakes. All these things which are totally not understandable were imposed to the people. You have to believe it, even if you don't understand, because it's written like that, because it comes from God, because of this, because of that. So exactly this heteronomous approach. So declaring the Spiritism as a religion would recall this in a lot of people, the majority of the people, and would have given a lot of problems. And this is why Kardec, even he suffered a lot of pressure, never fall into this mistake. So I must admit that in Brazil, it works like that. And it's definitively one of the reasons why in Brazil you have 4 million people declared Spiritist and even 20 or 30 million people which are sympathetic to the Spiritism. Why? Because in Brazil, you don't have so much diversity in the religions. All the people also coming from Africa, having all this practice from their original cultures, mixing mediumship with worship and so on. And there is a lot of reason why this approach was accepted in Brazil. And a lot of people, they go to the Spiritist center, like if they would go in the church. They go to listen to the teachings, to get the healing, to bring also the bottle of water for magnetizing the water, and they go home. But sometimes they buy a book, sometimes they read it, but it's the majority of these people don't go deeper in the teaching. They just go there because they like it, like if they would go to a church. So I don't tell it's negative, I don't tell it's wrong, but this is something that works in Brazil, but in France, at least, it doesn't work so good. And it wouldn't work. Why? Because of all these abuses who have been committed by the representatives of the religions, and where the people here had to fight in revolution to get rid of all these abuses. And nobody, at least here in France, wants to come back 2 centuries ago. So this is exactly a problem we have in this presentation, in this copy-paste of the way to see and to this religiosification of Spiritism in Brazil. You cannot copy-paste this to Europe because it doesn't work. And I see it was during a long time the feeling we had. It was also the opinion of some older leaders like Roger Perez, like Marcel Burtin, like Luis Serré, and Rafael Molina in Spain, and a lot of others. They were all unanimous telling this religious approach of Spiritism that made success in Brazil is not working here. So we have really to come back to the Spiritism as it was codified by Kardec in a neutral, universal, and autonomous way. Okay, and let's see what Kardec wrote also in this way. You see here again this same Spiritist magazine, December 1868, this same discourse of 1st of November. He is adding, let us add that tolerance, the consequence of charity, which is the basis of Spiritist morality, makes it a duty to respect all beliefs, wanting to be accepted freely by conviction and not by constraint, proclaiming freedom of conscience as an imprescriptible natural right. Spiritism says, if I'm right, others will end up thinking like me. If I'm wrong, I'll end up thinking like everyone else. By virtue of these principles, not throwing stones at anyone, it will not give any pretext for reprisals and will leave the deceased fully responsible for their words and actions. So you can see everyone is welcome, respects all the beliefs. And he even insisted stronger than this. For Spiritism, every belief, if it is sincere and does not lead to people to do wrong on their neighbor, is respectable, even if erroneous. So you can see that Spiritism is really open to any religion. It cannot take, how to say, the sticker of a given religion, because if you say Spiritist is Catholic or is Christian, what do you do then with Buddhists, with Hinduists, with Muslims, with Jewish, which are not Christian? Somehow you are coming and telling that Christianity is better than your belief, you see, and you start the mess. And the people, they just go away because voila, you come with the wrong approach. No, Spiritism is really universal. The moral teachings, the moral laws that are written into the book third of the Spirit's book, these are really universal, because when you go and study the roots of all the religions, when you remove all the errors of interpretation that have been introduced by mankind, and you really go to the source, to the root, you will see that all these moral laws, you can find them in almost every religion, sometimes a little bit different form, in a different form, adapted to the people, to the culture, and so on. But at the end, you find exactly the same teaching. And this is what we have to fight for, and not giving a particular color to it, because otherwise you close a lot of doors. And Spiritist is really for the world. It's not only for Christianity, you see. So this is something that luckily I could perceive myself, because in the year 2000, I had the huge opportunity to participate to a summit, which was organized in the UN premises in New York. So it was the Millennium World Peace Summit. It was in, if I remember well, August year 2000. And this summit was joining leaders of around 400 different religious groups or movements around the world. So it was really a huge effort done by UN in order to bring all these religious leaders together into this summit. And here I have some pictures. So the Spiritists, they were invited also to this summit. You can see the pictures, there are 5 people. I was again luckily to be, I don't know why, but I'm still remembering today of this extraordinary experience. And you see, out of the 5, only 2 are still incarnated. It's Divaldo Pereira Franco and myself. All the 3 others, unfortunately, they left already to the spiritual world. And here on the bottom picture on the right, you can see how many people this famous big room of the UN was full of religious people. And you could see everyone with his usual, how to say, way clothes and so on, traditional clothes from the religions. And of course, the Spiritists were somehow more, how to say, neutral clothes. And during this summit, has been signed a commitment that you can see here on the screen, the top part of it. I think you still can find this in the internet. If not, we can make this available for you. And this commitment for global peace was then listing around 10 or 12 basic principles. And the result was that from all these 400 representatives of religions who participated to the summit, 398 signed it, were in agreement with all these principles, you see, to collaborate, to pursue in the pursuit of peace in all its dimensions, to lead humanity by word and deeds in a renewed commitment to ethical and spiritual values, which include a deep sense of respect of all life and for each person inherent dignity and right to live in a world free of violence. You see, and 12 principles like this, everybody agrees. And from the 2 who did not agree, I think it was the Chinese, they didn't sign for political reason because the Buddhist, the Tibetan Buddhists signed it, you see. So this is demonstrating, it's a true demonstration that these moral laws are universal, they exist and they are admitted by everyone. And this is what you can find in this book 3rd of the Spirits book. Something which is universal. Of course, it's totally consistent with gospel and with Christianity. It's exactly the message that Jesus gave 2000 years ago. But not only, not exclusively. You have this in all the religions around the world, you see. That's why I say, let's go and insist on this universal moral, which is, as you have seen in the previous quote, based on the law of nature, not on what is written on the Spirit's book. It's the referential for the morality of Spiritism, the good and the bad, is based on what is in harmony or not with the law of nature. You see? So the referential is absolutely neutral. And Kardec also wrote, and Divaldo is also saying, what is important is not the belief you have, is what you do with it. And it is much better to have, for instance, an atheist which is charitable than a spiritist who does nothing. So the most important is not in the Spiritism. The Spiritism is only a lever, a way to reach this, and on a rational way to make it in line with faith and reason and so on. So it has a lot of advantages in the autonomous approach, which means when you do charity, you do it because you want and not because you want to go to hell, or you want to go to no solar and avoid to go to the Umbrau, or you see, there is no constraint like that. You do it because you understood and because with your will, you want to do it freely without waiting anything in exchange, without waiting any compensation of it. And this is then purely this autonomous approach. That is the approach that Kardec printed into the Spiritist teachings. Okay. So sorry, I was a little bit too long. 1 hour went already, but I'm coming there. Statistics of Spiritism, you can see January 69, Kardec published this. He wrote USA 4 to 10 millions. So of course, Kardec included into the Spiritists, the spiritualists. And this was during a long period, Spiritists and spiritualists making some congresses together. Léon Denis was always together with them. The Congress in Paris in 1889 and 1900 was Spiritist and Spiritualist Congress. Then you had the International Spiritualist Federation, translated into French was Fédération Spirit International. So you see, Spirit and Spiritualist were together during a long time. And unfortunately, it's only more recently, some decades ago, that there is some gap between Spiritists and Spiritualists, and I personally find it's a pity. We should have much more link with the Spiritualists in general, because they are very close from the Spiritist beliefs. Okay. And then you can see the other countries. So England at that time was ranked number 7. And Kardec, really, we found also in this 1,000 document, a lot of letters he wrote with Cola Vida in Spain and so on. And this gave him an idea, information also about the Spiritist movement in the other countries. And you see it was 70% men and 30% women. But here, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against 3 or 4, you see. Today, I would say it's the opposite. You have 70% women and 30% men. Okay, so it's like that. Continuing, of course, it developed a lot in UK, as you can see, Anna Blackwell. Thanks, Elsa, for this slide. Spirit's book, the first edition with his biography of Kardec, 1875. And also a book on mediums, the first translation into English. So this was already the decade after the death of Kardec. There was also all this huge, how to say, Society for Psychical Research, Royal Society of London, William Crookes making a lot of investigation, and almost all of them coming to the conclusion, yes, the phenomena are true, yes, it is real, no, there is no cheating, and so on. And really, this type of studies have been extremely developed in UK. And this is why, of course, we should also maintain the links because the Society for Psychical Research still exists today. So even if they are more interested in the phenomenology today and less into the consequences of the phenomenon, as Kardec developed from the beginning, I say we have a lot to win and to talk with these people. There is also such society in France, the Institut Métapsychique International. And I was surprised when I visited them a couple of years ago that most of them, the majority, are spiritualists already. They are not materialists. Then there was a worldwide dissemination, as I showed you. You see here some pictures of Tales de Menezes, Bezerra de Menezes, also Cola Vida, Amalia Domingo Soler, just to show also this first Spiritist Congress in 1888 in Barcelona, World Spiritist Congress with a picture. So we found now all these documents back, and they are available into the Encyclopédie Spirit for free download. If you want, you can go there and get all this information to learn what happened in detail during that time. Here I have a short list of Congress. I'm not sure all of them are here. I put in red, you see the one in UK. There are quite a lot. 1898, it was 50 years after Hydesville, it was in London. 1928, it was the birth year of our dear Janet. It was also in London. And then you see 37 Glasgow, 47 Bournemouth, 48 London again, and 1960 again London. So these were only the World Spiritist Congress. And then here, of course, you have from 1992 until 2019, the last one, which are promoted every 3 years by the International Spiritist Council. And also in the Spiritist Encyclopedia, you can find the, how to say, the summaries of all the speeches and so on. So it's 300-400 pages. And sometimes it's bilingual, French and English. So you, for instance, the one of London is bilingual, so you can have access to all the speeches, participants, informations, and so on of that period. A small here hello to our faithful apostles who fought a lot for Spiritism. Léon Denis, he was very well, always very aligned with Allan Kardec, developed enormously the philosophical aspect of Spiritism. And he was also deeply promoting this autonomous approach of Spiritism, as imprinted by Kardec. And also he participated also to all these congresses together with spiritualists. He was a big friend of Papus and so on. So he really sustained a strong Spiritism movement in France until his death, which was 1927. Another one who developed a lot the scientific aspect in France was Gabriel Delanne. Also very, very good. Again, it withstood, survived after the First World War, but then he died also in 26, and there are others, of course, Camille Flammarion, he died in 1925. So you see, in 3 years, we lost Flammarion, Delanne, and Denis. So it was a huge loss for the French Spiritism movement that still, how to say, survived reasonably until the Second World War. And this was really the big hit we had in Europe in the 20th century. And really a lot of people started asking the question, like the one you can see in here, how can such horrible things happen in Europe, the center of Europe, which is really the center of the how to say, democracy and all these things. You see, there was still a lot to happen and to learn. And this also helped a lot to how to say, to bring doubt into a lot of people, to have also the people joining materialism and so on, which, because there was also the industrial development after the war. So the Spiritism movement never disappeared. It was always surviving, but I would say at a low pace. And it is now, since the 80s, more or less, that it is really climbing again. And the more we come, I mean, along the years, even with a lot of problems here, there, whatever, even inside the Spiritist movement, some difficulties, there is more and more Spiritists everywhere in France, because we have all the Kardec's books available. And only the Spirits book is selling something like 5,000 books every year in France. So there is much more people reading and studying Spiritism and becoming Spiritist as what we think like this. This is why I can estimate that there are maybe not 4 million like in Brazil, but an expressive amount into France. Brazil also developed a lot. As I explained you at the beginning, it went in a little bit particular way with the religiosification of the movement. But you had also some excellent examples like Chico Xavier, tireless worker, exemplary medium. He really is recognized for his mediumship as being one of the best examples of medium as it was described by Kardec in the Medium's book, staying humble, simple, never getting any money back from his mediumnic books and activities. Even so, he wrote more than 400 books. He also did his own life charity and assistant works, helping a lot of people under this abacateiro, advocate trees. I don't know how to say it in English, very simple little house. When you go there to Uberaba, you can visit. It's really the best example of medium who stayed humble until the end of his life and never fall into traps like earning money or idolatry. But he was not the only one. There were a lot of others. Kai Barschuttel, for instance, he made a huge work in disseminating Spiritism. Lipitz Barzanulfo, which was also an extraordinary medium. Yvonne Pereira, who also have some very excellent books. And today, you see, we have still Divaldo Franco, which is, you can see here the picture of the Mansão do Caminho, helping thousands of people, children and adults every day. Also extraordinary medium, writing 400 books. And he's also an unrivaled speaker. Unfortunately, he cannot travel so easily anymore because of COVID, also because he's, as you can see, 93 years old. But he gives now a lot of lectures into virtually in the TV Mansão do Caminho, and really he's an unrivaled speaker. I would comparing a little bit with Léon Denis, because Léon Denis also was very, very well known as being a speaker. When he was making a speech in Paris or whatever, you had immediately thousands of people coming and assisting to his lectures. Question now, what can we do to bring the Spiritism a little bit more growing into Europe? Here also I want to homenage a very dear brother, which is Nestor Mazzotti. Unfortunately, he's back in the spiritual world. We are missing him a lot to be able to ring him easily and to ask for advices when we have difficulties or problems. He's, of course, still assisting from the spiritual world, but it's not the same anymore, of course. And he worked all his life to disseminate the books and having the books translated in as many languages as possible. So now I'm asking you frankly, are the English translation of Kardec's book okay? Yes? No? So,
Yes,
so?
at such point is okay. We have 5.
Yeah.
We have
You have all the 5 translated, sure. And the Gospel that has been revised recently by our dear Janet.
Yeah,
I
she's
was
here.
reading it myself. I really found it excellent, very, very well done, and so on. So I think the Gospel is really a good translation. But now about the Spirit's book, it's
I
maybe
tell
not
you,
so
Charles,
100% yet, is
I
it?
just received one new translation from America, a very nice one.
Yes. So there are, I think in America there are 3 or 4 translations already, and in UK you have the one from Anna Blackwell and maybe another one. And some of them are really not so good. Some of them, when I was reading, it's or when, for instance, the books were translated into Finnish by our friend Pekka, he was writing so many times to me, hey, Charles, here I have a problem. English translation is telling this, Brazilian translation is writing that, and it's not the same. So which one is okay? And I found so many problems into the English translation from that time. And even in the Brazilian translation, there were some mistakes. Sometimes the English was right and the Brazilian was not, interestingly. And this shows that I think really there is still, we are coming there, but I would really say it's a first priority to have this very good quality translation with the meaning fully into it, with also something which is easy and how to say, agradável, joyful, easy to read, let's say so, because otherwise it's very difficult to disseminate Spiritism. And we can see this in the other countries, for instance. German-speaking countries is, I would say, even a little bit more difficult than English, because the German translation are also existing, but the translation really are not so good. A lot of Germans, they tell me, the Medium's book, for instance, they started, but they had to stop after a couple of 10 pages because it's not really not good, easy to read, and not clear, and you have to read it several times to understand it and so on. Yes. So this one is from Emmanuel Dutre. You are on mute, Elsa.
There's a lot of appendix in errata and a lot of information added, including the first books, the first, not edition, when published, the first, second, all of them are here. Very nice information, historic.
Okay. Because what I saw also is there are some countries where the book have excellent translation. As I told you, Finnish. It's a small country, but there are excellent translation into Finnish. There is also excellent translation into Polish language by our other friend Konrad Jerzak. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, when you go to those countries, you see a lot of Finnish people and a lot of Polish people who came and tell, hey, this is what we were looking for. There is even spiritualist groups which are changing to spiritists because they found exactly what they were looking for, So for me, it's really key if the Spiritism can develop in countries only when you have good translation of these books. Otherwise, it's very difficult. You go in a country, you talk about Kardec, and you can explain 5 minutes to someone. But if you don't have the book in a good quality to put in his hands that he can study quietly without any pressure at home, it will be very difficult to disseminate and to have something growing, So it's really one of the first priority tasks, which was a priority of Nestor. And in a communication they received in a mediumnic meeting in Brasilia, a spirit told to Nestor, there is a lot of people around the world which are ready to accept and to receive Spiritist teachings, but the Spiritist teaching are not yet reaching them. So I think that's a big statement, which is still something on which we have to work a lot today. So I will accelerate a little bit because we are coming to the end. Again, the COVID we have today. If you go to the Spirits book 3rd, Moral Laws, chapter 6, Law of Destruction, there is a subsection called Destructive Calamities, and where you can see the question 737, which is exactly, okay, for which purpose does God inflict humankind with destructive calamities? So which is exactly the case of COVID. And when you read the answer, everything is here. Destruction is not a destruction, it's a transformation. We need to die and to reincarnate in order to have a bigger evolution. So it's somehow it's accelerating it. And at the end, you can see it is in order to make things arrive at a better order more quickly and to accomplish in a few years what would otherwise require many centuries. And COVID is really something, you see, we are stopped, we are confined, we cannot go out. Our liberty of movement, social meetings is reduced. So we are at home and we have time to think, okay, what is really essential, what is not, instead of running and looking all the other things to workaholic and money and the cars and all these things. We are at home, we have more time to think a little bit about ourselves, to make this inner examination, to know us a little bit better, and to really reflect, do I behave correctly? What can I change? What is really essential for me and what is not? So COVID, you see, for Spiritism is seen as an opportunity. Of course, it's very sad to have more than 1.2 million people died already around the world because of COVID, of course. But as you see, dying is not the end of anything. It's just the soul which gets free of the body, you see. So even the death, image of death in Spiritism, when you have a spiritualist vision, is not dramatic as it uses to be usually, and also for the people which are in a materialist paradigm, following a materialism paradigm. Okay, so we can see the things with a little bit more distance, and this is a huge resource to give us meaning in our lives and to overcome this type of difficulties. And he's also continuing with the, question 740. Couldn't calamities also be moral trials for humankind by exposing humans to the most afflictive needs? Calamities are trials that furnish humans with an opportunity to exert their intelligence, to find a way to fight against COVID, earthquakes as well, making buildings that do not collapse in case of earthquake. So it's developing the intelligence, and to demonstrate their patience and resignation before the will of God or the law of nature. At the same time, calamities enable them to develop the sentiments of self-denial, self-detachment, and love for their neighbor, if they are not dominated by selfishness. So COVID is helping, I would say, 1%, 2% of the population to get aware about these things, to improve. And then maybe there will be another COVID, it's another 1 or 2%. And with the time, you will have the humanity understanding this little by little, and let's say not letting them be dominated by this selfishness, which is really the worst thing for us, for each of us, and also for the humanity. And we have to be careful, because I don't want to make no one concerned here, but the COVID for me is just a small training, because there may be some other waves. We have the second wave of COVID now in Europe, but there may be other waves of other nature which may also follow. So really, it's something that is, in my view, preparing us, making us stronger, to be able to resist to things which could be even worse coming into the future. I don't say, and I don't want it to happen, but we have to be realistic. Climate change is really something that is now, people are more and more getting aware. Our planet is burning, and the consequences may be much stronger than what we think. And during all this, what should we do? Keep calm and read Kardec. We have made this campaign 5 years ago, and last year when the COVID was starting, I said, hey, we have exactly what we need here, and we just renewed the campaign, because it was an exact fit for COVID when we were all confined at home. Okay, what can we do? Well, here it is. Here is the answer. The Genesis is also giving some more hints. Where is the world going to? Transition to a better world. Time has come. Signs of the times. It's with the chapter 18. And Kardec was writing, up to now, humankind has made incontestable progress due to their intelligence. Humans have achieved results never reached before regarding the sciences, arts, and material well-being. There is much more progress yet to be made, however. They have yet to make charity, fraternity, and solidarity reign amongst them in order to assure their moral well-being. This was written 152 years ago, and you can see today the progress is even much more, but still the last part is what yet we have to develop and to do. So this shows you how actual are the Spiritist teaching, are the teachings contained into these 5 books of Allan Kardec. Translation to a better world by demonstrating the existence of immortality of the soul. Spiritism revives faith in the future, uplifts discouraged hearts, and enables us to bear the tribulations of life with resignation, as we have seen for the COVID. What do we have to do? What is the biggest enemy? In what way can Spiritism contribute to progress? By destroying materialism, one of the sources of society. It enables people to comprehend where their true interests lie. In the future, life is no longer, since the future life is no longer veiled by doubt, men and women will better understand that they can ensure their future based on the present. Destroying the prejudice of sect, caste, and color, Spiritism teaches them about the great solidarity that must unite them as brothers and sisters. So fighting against materialism, not with violence, but with arguments. And this is coming. Spiritualism is in the air. 2/3 of the Germans are already believing that the life continues after the dead. 2/3 of the French as well. So the real materialists are minority already. They are only 1/3. No? 2/3 they have already this spiritualism in belief. So let's go and disseminate the arguments in favor of this, because the people are ready to accept it, as we told from this communication when we spoke about Nestor Mazzotti. And in France, there was also a survey done where 42% of the French stated that, yes, it is possible to remind from one of our past lives. This means that almost half of the French population is already believing in reincarnation. So we really should not be shy. Let's go explain, show the arguments, the evidences we have about this, because the people are already here. Almost a majority of the people is already here to accept. We have also this extraordinary near-death experience phenomenon, which is the best evidence of spiritualism. And you can see here the statements of Pim van Lommel and Eben Alexander, two very well-known scientists, clearly opening the way to the spiritualist paradigm of the medicine. Here, this is a little bit older work which has been done by a French guy, Superluminous Man, and where he was stating consciousness has a material reality of a field of matter different from those currently known, but which interacts with them. So he is clearly entering into this half matter or semi-material world that spiritists known as being the nature of the perispirit and so on. And he was calling this superluminous world. And Jean-Jacques Charbonnier, Philippe Lallier, they called it, make a thesis about extraneuronal intuitive consciousness. So when you ask Charbonnier, what the hell does it mean? He says, but it's a spirit. Extraneuronal intuitive consciousness. And he was telling we had to invent such a naming because otherwise it would not have been accepted as a thesis in the university, medical university of France. So it's another way to coming and to show that this type of idea is now gaining a lot of space, also in the medical field here in Europe. This scientist, I like him very much. He's really top of the, the physics, like Stephen Hawking or so ever, an equivalent really in this circle of really the top guys in the world. And he wrote this book where he is developing a physics of consciousness. And he's clearly also going to the, how to say, non-material paradigm, spiritualist paradigm, saying that the determinism really does not make sense. And he's showing intention, which comes as an excitation from the void or the vacuum. I don't know which is the best word that I want to put, void or vacuum. And what is a vacuum for the physics today? It all what is not matter in this three-dimensional and one time dimension, in the four-dimension material world. So it comes from the vacuum. So the perispirit and the spirit are in the vacuum, and he's telling the information is coming from there, you see. So he's not yet at the perispirit, but he's really coming very close to it. He admits that there is something coming from the void which is influencing our will, our consciousness, and so on, going exactly against this determinism of the mainstream of the science still today. So there also it's changing. You can see also this, I think I showed it last time, Manifest for a Post-Materialist Science. You can write the website here, openscience.org. Please go and see the statements. You will see there is now several hundreds of very eminent scientists which are telling the fact not to study this phenomenon like NDE, like mediumship, the fact not to admit that there is something existing different from the known four-dimensional matter is not scientific. Science must be open to all these things. And they have really very clear statements also promoting this post-materialist science. So it's coming, you see, we are on the right track. This is also some advertisement on the next Congress. As I heard that it is already full, that there is so many people which registered that the registration is maybe not possible anymore. But since all the will be, so it will not be possible anymore to assist it live, but you can still try. You have the website to make your registration. And even if the registration is not possible, it will then later be in YouTube, Facebook, and so on. You will be able to assist later on. So there are some registered lectures, and also there will be a live question and answer session. And this will be translated into 4 or 5 languages, including Portuguese, Spanish, English, French, and I think also German. And here also Marlene Noble, I think you met her, maybe she in UK, she was always fighting for the spiritual paradigm of medicine, stating that the human being is a bio, socio, psycho, spiritual being. So you have to consider all these dimensions to see the mankind in the humankind in the integrality, and to have progress in the medicine to overcome the different problems that we are facing. Profile of the good leader, also clear message. Jesus showed us the example. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. So he was washing the feet of his apostles. So we have to put this in practice into the Spiritist movement. The more we grow in the Spiritist hierarchy, the more we have the duty to serve and not to dictate or to impose anything. And this is, by the way, recognized now almost universally everywhere, even in the business. You see this difference between a boss and a leader. And intelligence is not the main factor for having a good leader. You have to have, at the same time, intelligence, intellectual intelligence, and also emotional intelligence. As it is written, you can see humble leadership, lead with humility. I mean, a lot of things and books and principles which are already written, even in the business, in the industry, wherever, management, and so on. These type of things are being taught. So you see, even here, even if it's for different purposes, to make the team reaching goals which are financial or technological or innovating or whatever. But at the end, you can see that this principle taught by Jesus is now entering into the minds, slowly but surely. Unshakable faith is the only one who can, is the kind that can stand face to face with reason in all human epochs, going from the blind faith and fanaticism to the reasoned faith that has been promoted by Kardec. And out of charity, there is no salvation. So this is what I wanted to say. I'm sorry, having passed a little bit the time, but I'm still here available. If you have any question, it will be a pleasure for me to answer. And I thank you a lot for your patience and your attention.
Great. Thank you so much, Charles. It was amazing. It was right on time. So beautiful. Thank you for that. I know some people have to leave. Some people have to go to other meetings and things like that. So I'm just going to do a quick final prayer. And we are open if anyone wants to stay a little longer and talk and ask questions. It's absolutely fine. We won't take a lot of time doing that, but we can do that for a couple of minutes more. Okay. So if I could just ask everyone again to close their eyes and take a deep breath and calm our minds and hearts and feel the energy surrounding us, all the help that has been brought to us, the healing, the peace, the cleansing that happened around us during this talk, the amazing energies we have received from Charles and his knowledge. and how generous he was to share all these things with us. Let's be thankful for the opportunity of being together again, studying, learning, finding ways of changing our lives and our old habits. Let's vibrate for all those who cannot be with us tonight. May they be helped and receive some of these amazing energies that surround us. And I'll ask the spirit benefactors and the guardian angels to protect us this whole week until we meet again next Thursday. For those who only came for this talk, may they be protected in their daily lives. And hopefully we'll see each other again soon. And with the permission of the spirit benefactors, I would like to close this meeting now. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much, everyone, for your help, your participation, for your presence. Hope everyone is okay. If anyone wants to stay longer and ask questions, we're open for that. And hopefully we'll see each other again.
Thank you, Johnny.
Pleasure.
Thank you all.
Charles, can you stop share screen? And Janet is here as well, okay, Charles? I don't know if you can see. If you, okay.
Here we are.
Hola, hello, Janet.
Since the beginning. Huh?
Yes, since the beginning, yes. Hi, Janet, you are in mute. Okay. We can hear you. Johnny, can you unmute?
Janet?
I cannot unmute her. She has to do it herself. Charles, just before, so while she's doing that, I would like to ask you a question. Why was there no World Spiritist Congresses between 1960 and 89?
There were. The only thing is, you know, I'm doing the researches of history, so I started from Kardec, and so far I arrived at 1960. But
Okay.
don't wait a little bit, because I will continue the researches,
Okay.
and for sure I will find some others which happened into this interval.
Great. Would anyone, if anyone wants to talk, before you unmute your microphones, just raise your hand, and then which will take you to the top of the list, and then you can talk, okay? Just so we don't talk over each other. Yeah, you can do that also on Zoom.
Denizard, speak.
Hi, Elsa.
Okay. Charles, thank you so much. Would you be able to, what's the relationship between this Congress and the Quakers with Spiritism? How do we connect with the Quakers?
It's an interesting question, and I must admit that I learned to know the Quakers thanks to our dear Janet, because I think the first time we came to London, I think it was in the 90s, late 90s, we had the meetings in a room which was rented by Quakers, and this is when I could a little bit discuss with the guy who was there and read a little bit what was around the in the, how to say, the information which was on the walls of this institution. And really, I found positive. The Quakers, they have, of course, a spiritual approach, and they are also very open. You see, this is one current where you don't have this exclusivism, as I stated, that you have, for instance, into Catholic or Protestant or Orthodox or whatever, at least in the official way. The Quakers, they are much more open to the other spiritualist currents. This is what I got from them. Now, I cannot go deeper. I don't know, for instance, if the Quakers are open to reincarnation or such things. I'm not sure, or to mediumship. What I can tell you is in France, we had similar experience, not with Quakers, but with so-called Dominicans. Dominicans, it's a branch of Catholicism, but which is very open. And they rented us also the room to make lectures about reincarnation. And then I was asking to the guy, how are you Catholic Dominicans enabling us to make a teach about reincarnation in your room? And he told me very clearly, hey, don't be mistaken. When you go to the how to say, the university, how is this called in English? Religious university, where the students are studying Catholicism and so on.
Theology, no?
Yeah,
Theology, yes,
Theological,
theology.
yeah.
He told that more than 50% of the students are convinced that reincarnation is true. They are totally aware about this Council of Nicaea and all these things, how it disappeared and so on. And then I told, this is surprising for me. Why are then in the small cities and the small churches, they're talking so strongly against, but these are the small churches, don't worry, and so on. So you see, the things are not always like we think. And this is why Spiritism, we must stay open also. We cannot say, oh, this guy is spiritualist, or that guy is this, that guy is theosophist, whatever. We must be more open to all these different beliefs. Of course, we have our basis, which is Kardec. I'm the first one telling, don't change one comma in Kardec's books, at least to respect his moral rights. But we should really be more open to all these people. And I tell you, a lot of people are, for instance, wrongly practicing mediumship or asking for money or things like that. Why? Simply because they did not have yet access to the right arguments that we have into the Spiritist teachings, showing the inconvenience of I call it rematerializing the spiritualism, you see, because if you ask money for mediumship, you do mediumship, you are spiritualizing, go to the spiritual world, and then you make money, but you come back to the material world, you see. So it's a kind of resistance which is happening. Our world is so strongly material, so we should never ever condemn everything or hurt the people. We should be open and tolerant, albeit we should also stay firm on our principles that we understood and that we have, you see.
I have another question, Charles. Thank you. With simplifying, because you're very much into the translation. I've done some translation work from Portuguese to English, and very, very cautious with it. And it's such a delicate task. But when we're looking at some of the spiritual principles, translating it over, there's almost an urge to simplify it a little bit. How do you feel about us digesting the knowledge and transferring it back simplified? Or do you think that's wrong? Or is it best to just stick to the way that it, because I mean, Allan Kardec was very academic, and not all of us are. And to learn to love that sort of literature, it takes a lot. And sometimes there's the thirst, but there isn't the academic. There's intelligence, but there isn't the academic there. So how do we simulate the two together, especially to those that are just starting and are interested in the principles?
So this is a very, how to say, complex question. I mean, again, I'm looking to my dear sister Janet. We are discussing this since decades. Traduttore, traditore, que se dice, qui are saying the Italians. So translation is really a very complicated thing. With regards, so I think you have to fulfill the meaning. It's clear. Even so, when you do a translation, you are a little bit more free in the form you are changing it, but the meaning you should bring it through, you know. But then to say, you can say it in a softer way or using more modern words and so on. And this is exactly what Janet did for the last gospel. In the revision, it's really, I think, thank you, Janet, because it's really well done. Now, with regards to this academic approach of Kardec, yes, But you see, it is academic in French as well. And in French, we are publishing the book of Kardec as he has written them. We did not change one comma, nothing. And even so, you see, majority of people is reading them and understanding them. So don't be so much afraid also about this. And you see, even in Brazil, the translation into Portuguese are very well. And you have people very simple, living in favela and so on, who are reading them and understanding them very well, you see. So that I would say is not so much a hurdle. Of course, it's dense, it's condensed and so on. You can then freely write, like Léon Denis did, write the principles with your words, explaining the same meaning in a softer way, you know. So this is absolutely possible to do. And Léon Denis did it. We have some other young French guy who did it as well, to use words of young people to explain the same meaning, you see. So I encourage really to do this complementary literature based on this. But coming back to Kardec, I would say you really have to, the meaning has to be translated, passed through. But of course, don't use, word by word. If you stay too close to the French, it will not be a good English. You have to write it in an English way, but keeping as much as you can the content which is in the original book. This is what I could say so far, shortly on this difficult subject.
Thank you so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
a good example of that is the way Haroldo is doing has done the translations. He has gone into time and searched for the context in which some words were said and why they were saying certain things to explain it better. Otherwise, it does lose meaning. And a lot of, and especially Charles, you speak Portuguese, so you know how a lot of times we use, they're not even slang, they're just colloquialisms, they're ways of saying things. They're very pertinent, very local to areas of Brazil. And that becomes a bit different, difficult to translate at times. And I think that, so you need to get the gist and then translate the gist more than actually word by word.
I think, Haroldo, you meant the translation he made on the Gospel, no? On the Testament, New Testament. And this is, I would say, even more complex because you had Aramaic, Greek, Latin, and with words which have Hebrew. I mean, it's much more complex because it's 2,000 years ago, you know, and with much more languages and so on. But Kardec is relatively easy, I would say, because it's French. The French language did not change so much with the time. You have, of course, some what we call idiomatic expression. Is it correct in English? Expression idiomatique in French. But you take the dictionary of the French Academy of 1835, which was valid at the time when Kardec wrote the book. And when you have a doubt, go there and check or ask me. I will bring you immediately to that book and say, this is exactly the meaning of what Kardec wanted to say at this place. So you see, here we have much better conditions because there is really no ambiguity in the books written by Kardec. And we have the full tracking and the full meaning of the words. And this is, I did it for Polish guide translation, for Finnish translation, for translation made also in other countries. They always come to me and ask me, what did this really mean? And generally I go to the Dictionnaire de l'Académie Française. This is exactly what it means, you know. So the Testament is much more complex, but for Kardec's book, even this difficulty, I don't see so much. And this dictionary from the Académie Française, you can download freely from the French National Library. It's for free. There are 3 volumes. It's, of course, I don't know, 500 megabytes each, but you can download them on your computer very easily.
Charles, I would like to say thank you very much for your presence. I must go. I leave the room now because you can carry on a little bit, but I have something to finish. And thank you very much indeed. It was amazing because it's a documentary. It's not only a lecture. It's a documentary for a lot of people can research, because the research that you have done you gave into the light to everyone, because this video will be available in YouTube of Paz in 1 week time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Elsa, for the opportunity. And I have no appointment later today or tomorrow morning early, so I still can stay if you want. No problem for me.
Yeah,
But thank you, Elsa. Thanks a
thank
lot
you
for the
very much.
opportunity.
Thank you all. Bye bye, Danusa, Janet. Bye bye. Bye bye,
Bye-bye,
Sayani.
Elsa.
Kisses for everybody.
I have another question. When you presented the part with the statistics of Spiritism,
Yes.
and he shows France in first place and then England 7th place, is this based on 1869 or is it more recent?
1869.
So in 1869, Italy was the second biggest public for Spiritism.
Yes.
I did not know that.
And I mean, Kardec made these statistics. You know that he was also a member of the Society of Statistics, French Society of Statistics. And since he received, and we see it now, sometimes 100 letters every day from France and wherever out of the world. So he really had the data, you know, to make this statistic estimation. So it's a very simple work he made, and he published it in the Revue Spirit from January 69, which was 2 months before he died. And this is why I bring it to show, okay, this is the zero picture at that date, what it was. Of course, he was not talking so much about Brazil, even so he had some visitors of Brazil in the French Society. We have no evidences of this. And he had also first contact with some Brazilian guys who asked to translate. But the real translation, first translation into Spanish, was done by a French guy, which was in Rio de Janeiro, 1862 or whatsoever. Canu, I think, was his name. And then the other translation came only in the 70s, then with the follower of Kardec giving all the allowances and so on for it.
And why do you think that these countries, the spread of Spiritism didn't actually grow to be as significant as it is in Brazil? Because we have places like Greece was amongst the 10 number, like the top 10.
Yes.
And Sweden and Denmark and places like that. And I've been to Greece. I don't remember anyone talking about Spiritism over there.
I think Elsa knows one, because she met one when she was there visiting these places of Paulo de Tarso. There are some Spiritists in Greece. We have some translation into Greece. But here again comes the thing. I mean, at that time, the Greeks could read French, you know, and today not. They can only read Greek. So you have to have the books in Greek. Otherwise, how do you want to develop it? So there are some translations into Greece. But again, it needs to be, how to say, put on the market, made available to the people and so on. And I'm not sure it's done yet. And this is, I would say, the main reason. Because when you go to Sweden and Denmark, for instance, you have huge spiritualist movements, which stayed along since 150 or 170 years ago. And they are still quite active today, the spiritualist movement. And I was in Copenhagen last year, and we met a lot of spiritualists, and people are really, how to say, very, very open to Spiritism. And Sweden is the same. And Holland is the same. And UK also, you have a lot of spiritualists still in UK. But as I told you, some may not believe in reincarnation. Some may practice mediumship for money. So you will find these things. But again, for me, it's a question. We should not close the door to those people. We should discuss with them and bring them the arguments. We should not fall into the same difficulties ourselves because we understand, you see. I don't say we should accept to be paid for mediumship. No, but we should then quietly, convincingly, but not, how to say,
imposing,
softly, diplomatically, bring them the arguments, you see. And then some will change, some not. And this is then the freedom of each one.
Absolutely. Would anyone like to ask anything? Yeah, hi,
So you
Yes,
need
Janet?
to see how she can unmute.
If you just click on the little microphone that's crossed out right now, you should be able to talk.
Wait, is that,
Yes.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Ah, right. No, what I wanted to make one or two comments about spiritualism with regard to the UK, because Anna Blackwell, as you've mentioned, translated the Spirit's book and the Medium's book.
Yes.
When I arrived in the UK 35 years ago, lots of people had these books, and all the spiritualists, or most of them, had the books, the two books, but they decided for some reasons to not follow the teachings. If you just read the Medium's book, it explains so much about all the phenomena.
Yes.
And it explains very little about the philosophy.
Yes.
And they came to understand and to feel and to desire that, oh, the phenomenon was fantastic. So they left behind the philosophy and went full ahead with the phenomena.
Correct.
And so it's even today we have newspapers, we have articles, and still the spiritualists are not spiritists.
Clearly, yes.
There's a big gap still between them. And with the reason for people charging for mediumship and charging for healing, they're very fond of healing. And especially with the healing, I used to ask them, well, why do you charge? If Jesus wants us has given us this faculty to heal and wants us to heal, then I should be doing it all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then how am I going to pay the rent and buy my food? I have to have money. So I am obliged to charge for the healing. And all sorts of argumentations like this. So I think you talk an awful lot about spiritualism, but I hope it's not as bad in this country as in others. But I would still say today that the spiritualists are not spiritists.
Clearly, it's true. The spiritists are spiritualists, but the spiritualists are not spiritists, clearly.
Yeah. As
Kardec wrote. And again, I mean, when you read in the medium book, it's written already why you should not pay for mediumship, clearly. In the medium's book, it's explained.
Yes,
and also the medium books is saying you should not practice it permanently. You should practice it only in your free time if you want. So, and you should live from something else. And then you have the example of Chico Xavier and so on. So we have a lot of arguments to bring them, you see.
What do you mean talking about Chico Xavier? People in this country don't read Chico Xavier.
But you see, you have the biography written by Guy Playfair, isn't it?
Yes, but I mean, it hasn't percolated in the country at all, and amongst the spiritualists, etc. And maybe in the medium's book, they say about not charging, but